All right, good morning. Welcome back to the Carolina CRE podcast. I'm Forrest Hefner, your host, here with Aubrey Linville. Aubrey's become a good friend in a very short period of time. Sometimes you just hit it off with people and you just jive and have a lot in common, a lot to talk about. And I reached out to Aubrey just basically on a cold email, and a lot of people don't answer those. It's actually through LinkedIn, and Aubrey actually responded, and we got together, I don't know, 6-8 months ago when we become friendly. So happy to have him on here today. Aubrey, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, what's going down in Winston Salem, North Carolina today?
What's going down today? Let's see. We got a lot going on. We are currently raising for a few deals in our private equity fund. That's taken a lot of time and energy. Got a couple new hires that are coming through. We've got a couple interviews today, growing our presence in Columbus, Ohio, in our office there. We're picking up three new assets that we'll close on in the next 60 days out there. So need a little better coverage up that way than we currently have. But other than that, it's kind of business as usual. People say, what have you been up to? And I say work, family, repeat, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. I think we're all trying to figure out how we do it the other way, where it's family, work, repeat. But hadn't found that perfect balance yet.
Yeah, and I know you got a lot of transition. I know your daughter's getting ready to go off to college. That's pretty cool. So tell me more about Linville Team Partners, expand, everything else you got going on.
So Linville Team Partners is year 15 for us, so still relatively new company, I guess. What started as Linville Team Partners was a guy by the name of Coleman Team, great friend of mine, and Aubrey Linville as business partners. And what we thought would be sort of just a two-man shop doing a lot of principal-related activities and some brokerage activities organically grew over the last 15 years into a fairly significant regional boutique brokerage shop. We're headquartered in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Fast forward a couple years after we founded the company, we had gotten into development. We had gotten into construction as sort of a subsidiary of the development company. These are through various related entities. And then we got into private equity, which is now Front Street Capital, which is Coleman is the president of Front Street Capital. I'm not affiliated with them anymore. He is not affiliated with Linville Team Partners anymore. I'm the president of this company. And this company has started a new business unit called Expand. It's 4 years old. We're doing buy-side and sell-side advisory in the M&A space, primarily automotive, childcare, and health and wellness. So that business operates in 48 states. So we have brokerage, we have our buy-side and sell-side advisory with Expand. And then last but certainly not least is our private equity fund, which we refer to as LTP IP, our investment platform. So you asked earlier, what am I up to today? I was just reviewing the new websites for all three business units that are going to launch here very shortly. So excited to get those out there and live and let each business tell their story online a little bit better than I could tell you here on the podcast.
Now, are you refreshing those? Is there some sort of new launch or anything, or is it just time for a refresher?
They've all been nested under the Linville Team Partners website, which is ltpcommercial.com. And they're all big enough businesses to where they deserve their own platform to tell their story. There's just enough going on. You can't fit it all in one place. So the messaging is very different across the three business units. And so is it time for a refresh? Yeah. Is it time for them to all have their own voice, place that they can tell their own story on a website and LinkedIn? Yes, that as well.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier in our episode here that Aubrey and I, had a lot in common, kind of hit it off right from the start. Part of that might be that we took sort of a circuitous route to get where we are today, especially from like a collegiate standpoint. Aubrey, tell me kind of about that background, or tell the audience about that a little bit.
Yeah. At the time, it was the toughest thing that was happening to me, but in hindsight, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. So graduated from high school, never toured a college. Both of my parents went to ECU. Both of my older sisters went to ECU. So what do you know? I ended up at ECU. And I got a .9 my first semester, pledged to fraternity, got a .9, convinced my parents that I would make better grades my second semester if they would let me move out of the dorm into a house with 3 seniors,
Obviously.
and got a .0 my second semester. So parents quickly moved me home and took everything I had away. I didn't realize how good I had it until that moment. So I went to Forsyth Tech Community College for a year, made straight A's. I worked 3 jobs, survival mode at that point. And after a year, a friend of mine called me on a Friday and said, "Hey, what would you think about moving to Wilmington and going to Cape Fear Community College? Classes start on Monday." I was like, I don't know. I don't think my parents would support that. I've got these 3 jobs, I'm in a pretty good rhythm. So I floated the idea by my parents, and they said, "We'll give it another shot. Let's try this." So moved to Cape Fear. Met my wife the first night I was there. Been married for 26 years. So it's amazing how these things happen.
Yeah.
Kind of did the same deal there. Had to make straight A's, and then ended up getting into NC State. Just kind of any degree I could get. I knew my parents would continue to support me. I was very fortunate to have a situation where my parents could afford to support me after I had proven to them that it was a worthwhile investment from them. But I finished at NC State as a Parks and Rec major. It was like it's the only. I really didn't have anything going on in Parks and Rec, but it was a way to get a 4-year degree. And interestingly enough, I know you're in the Pinehurst area. A guy that sat next to me in class and I started a small business together our senior year. I was on the 5.5-year plan. So my last year is the founder of Stitch Golf. So serial entrepreneur, a guy named Charlie Burgoyne, great guy. He sat next to me in class when we started a little junior golf business. And that was really my entrance into being an entrepreneur. It kept me from getting a real job, graduating from college, and very thankful for that.
No, I love that story. I got obviously we've spoken. I have a lot in common. I coincidentally or ironically, those are get mixed up often, but I did very similarly my first semester in college. The second semester I pledged my fraternity. I actually did pretty well because they made you do. They made us do. I don't know what do you call it, like not tutoring, but study hours, things like that. So shockingly beneficial in that way. So, all right. So Aubrey, before we ever met, I did a bunch of research on you, listened to some podcasts, and I really enjoyed hearing about your dad and his career. Do you mind speaking about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. He's the GOAT, in my opinion. I was so lucky to have him as he's still my best friend. We spent a ton of time together. He lives full time in Florida now, but he still has a home in Winston Salem, so he comes back, and I get to see him, or I go there to see him. But he was a serial entrepreneur. He was one of the first putt golfing games franchisees. So you think like the orange bumper boards and the green golf before there were mountains and animals and go-karts and all this other kind of stuff. But so he was a very early franchisee in putt, and he became, I think, their largest franchisee. He had 26 locations when he was about my age. I'm 49 now. And he had evolved from putt golfing games. They're all east of the Mississippi, mostly along the eastern part of our country. And he had evolved into having some small amusement parks. Raleigh, he had one on Capitol Boulevard called Adventure Landing, had a big one in Jacksonville, Florida called Adventure Landing, Daytona Beach, and maybe one in Texas, I believe. And anyway, he all he knew was how to hustle, which is really all I know too. I'm just a hustler. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'll work as hard as anybody else or outwork anybody else and figure out how to make it all work. So I saw that in him, and what we talked about around the kitchen table as a family, when work would come up, was never really about, how do we sell more rounds of miniature golf, or how do we sell more tokens, or it was always about how do I find the best location. and what market should we go to and why, and what's going to be the best corner. So it was that kind of stuff. And nobody had CoStar back then. Nobody had no internet, I guess, back then, or I know there was no internet back then. He would get these books from Staubach. Roger Staubach had this company in Texas where they would do all this demographic research, and God knows what he would pay for this. In Raleigh, North Carolina, a study on a site on Capitol Boulevard, he would get this big 3-ring binder, and that was like his Bible on whether or not this was going to be the right site to go to or not. And it's just amazing now, with the click of the mouse, you can get all that data in 5 seconds. But anyway, so I would watch him work. He would be the GC and sub all the work out to get these built. And he exited his business when he was about my age, had a partial exit and then another exit a little bit later. And he, when you hear about YOLO, you only live once, that has always been his mantra. He's always lived life to the fullest. He's been such a great role model for me and my sisters, and the grandchildren, as has my mother as well. And yeah, I would say he's taught me almost everything I know when it comes to business.
That's really cool. How did he get into that?
He had, I won't tell the story perfectly. So Dad, if you listen to this podcast, sorry if I mess it up. You can smack me when you see me, but he graduated from ECU. He was like the class president. He was the mascot. He was Mr. ECU when he was there. And he ended up having some kind of business in Greenville or Fayetteville where he bought or rented one of these big slides, and he would sit on a burlap sack and he would charge people, 25 cents to ride it. And then he tells stories about he got a vending machine, and it was very early before there were a lot of vending machines out there, and he was making enough money off the vending machine to support my mother and him. And then they started selling candy, and they made enough money selling candy to support having their first daughter, my oldest sister, Holly. And then ended up somehow in the putt-putt world with the guys that were all out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. That's where they're headquartered out of.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah, and then I think it just one thing led to the next. I think he found a location in Rockville, Maryland, which is where I grew up, just right outside of DC. And he was there day to day, operating it, growing his business from there. And ultimately, we moved to Winston Salem, which is where he was born. But
that's great. Yeah, I was in Rockville last week actually. And Fayetteville is now. There's 2 stories to the founding of putt-putt. The idea of putt-putt, and one is that it was Thistledew in Fayetteville was the original putt-putt, commercial putt-putt, and then the theory is the Chattanooga one. There's one up there, I can't remember what it's called, but they claim to be the home of putt-putt as well, so there's a little conflict there, but that makes sense that he got connected with that in Fayetteville. So
yeah.
Very long story about why I know that, and it's not entertaining at all. So all right, so I want to, Aubrey, I want to hear more about Expand. Like, what's the origin story there? What are you guys doing over there?
Yeah. Expand came from what was originally my just book of business in the office. And I started a team with Jordan Cooper, who's a partner at Linville team. Her and I started working together, doing general brokerage work, like what we had always been doing. And I met a guy named Justin Strickland, who I met him at a prison ministries breakfast. The county manager, Dudley Watts of Forsyth County, invited me and invited him to sit at his table and sit next to this guy. Had never met him, never heard of him. He had never met me and never heard of me. Like, hey, what do you do for a living? He said, I own a couple oil change facilities. And he said, what do you do for a living? I own a little commercial real estate company. And fast forward 6 months later, we connected again, and he was trying to figure out how to get franchisees that didn't know a whole lot about real estate and do site selection work for them. So help them find a site, let's just say somewhere in Texas, like Dallas, Texas, a franchisee in Dallas, Texas, to go to Texas, help them find a site, pair them with a developer, get the site built where they would sign a 15-year lease and operate out of this store. So that started happening with one franchisee, then started happening with another franchisee. And over time, what we started to find was there were opportunities to go buy Billy Bob's oil change, whatever the name might have been, in somewhere in Texas. And the franchisee oftentimes were not interested in buying another business. They wanted, and rightfully so for them. You know, this is their dream and what they bought into. They wanted a new 3-bay, 1,600 square foot, nice oil change facility on a great corner. And it was kind of all happening right at the time when the market changed really fast. You know, what cost, you know, whatever it was, $1 million to build a store. Now it's $2 million, and it was a seller's market. It was hard to find dirt. The zoning and entitlement process in a lot of these municipalities was changing to where they didn't want as many automotive uses on their high profile retail corridors. So it really, the lifeblood of the work that we were doing for Strickland Brothers became this M&A piece, to finding more of the Billy Bob's oil change that were, you know, 150,000 in EBITDA that you could buy at, you know, some multiple that made sense. And many times, if a franchisee declined to buy the site, but was okay with corporate buying the site, they would buy it. And then, honestly, this thing really just morphed into a pretty critical piece of their growth and a really big business for us, which was just identifying these acquisition opportunities rather than finding the next piece of dirt to build a building on. So the build to suit program is not dead at Strickland Brothers, but I would say it's kind of on pause. It's just hard to make these deals pencil. So we're in an all-out effort to find as many of these acquisition units as possible. So through that, we've built this proprietary technology platform and system to keep up with all these opportunities. We have a database of over 50,000 leads across all the different acquisition type work that we're doing that are validated. We know who owns it. We know everything about the location, how many bays it has, or if it's a child care site, how many students are enrolled, how many students are they allowed to have, you know, there's all these things. And we took that skill set after working with Justin and said, you know, I think we can do this in other verticals. So not only are we doing it in the oil change space exclusively for Strickland Brothers, we're now doing work for collision companies. We're doing work in the general automotive space, and then the largest players in the child care space and the health and wellness space as well. So it's really turned into half or a little bit more than half of Linville Team Partners business. And Expand, it's XPAND, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Linville Team Partners. So it's really fun. I mean, I think you noticed when you came to our office, there are a lot of young people here. Yep. Our entire office is young. I think I'm the oldest guy here at 49. We're just a group of young, hungry, really fun, energetic, charismatic, fun-loving people that are working together and doing great work for our clients. And I love coming in the front door here. Like I tell people, I may have even told you this before you come. I was like, when you come in the front door here, there's just an energy about this office. Like, yeah, it's a cool 2-story with a big open mezzanine. Like, it looks cool, but there's something about the space and the people that are here that it's just, it's got this really strong energy about it that it's a lot of fun. And a lot of that has started with the Expand group.
Yeah, I can attest to that. When you walk into their office in Winston, it's downtown. Not only is it got a lot of energy, but you know, architecturally, cosmetically, it was designed with a lot of thoughtfulness in mind. And it's, in fact, when I came home after that, a couple weeks later, we were at one of our weekly meetings, leadership team, one of my companies. I sat down, and was like, guys, this office is flat. Like, we're a design organization. How do we expect anybody to be creative in this space? It's sterile, beige walls, carpet. It's a nice office, but there's no energy. And so it makes a huge difference in productivity and the type of people you can attract with a space like that. So we mentioned kind of pre-recording about, you know, you mentioned so many young people. You know, what's the reason for that? Is it just coincidence, or is that a conscious effort? Because I noticed when I came in there, I think I mentioned it to you, Aubrey. It's like, you got a lot of young people here. This is great, but what's the impetus?
I don't really. I mean, it hasn't been intentional. I think we've just found some really high quality younger talent that loves being here. That's told their friends, and most of the time when we've found somebody that feels like they could be very additive to what we're doing culturally first, and then business second, we try to find a seat for those people.
Yeah.
So that's it. And I don't really know there's no real why behind it, but I can tell you this, I love it.
Yeah.
I get so much energy from it. I mean, I love walking through the office and giving people high fives and seeing everybody interacting with each other. And that's really, I said at our Christmas party last year, like my proudest accomplishment in life is my family, my wife and my two kids. But my second proudest accomplishment in life is the family that I've built here at the office. I mean, it is such a cool group of people that would protect each other at all costs. And I think that's talked about, having a great culture at a lot of places. But I mean, you saw it when you were here. I mean, it's just different. And we will protect that at all costs.
No, I love that. I was in. I mentioned we were around Rockville, Maryland last week. My son went to camp at University of Maryland. We, Congressman's husband, his wife, and they're friends of ours. So they got us a tour at the Capitol, and you walk around that place, wow. And essentially, if you've never been around like Congress or something like that, it's a bunch of like politicians and then young interns and staffers and things like that. But it's a really fun energy, and I'm not into a whole lot of politics or anything like that, but a lot of young people, and I just can imagine it's a lot of fun to work there at that age. Although I'm too old to live in D.C., man. That city living's for young people.
Not only are being around younger people, but we're still young, right? Fourth, we're not too old. Being around younger people has got great energy, and some of them, this is their first. Most of them, this is their second job. Most of them have had internships, have shown some interest in real estate through college, and are here to learn a lot. And I think we've done a really good job of onboarding people, empowering them to learn on their own a little bit. But man, we are learning a lot from them too. I mean, especially in the age of AI. We have a guy who's an associate here, just graduated from college, who he's going to start spending half of his time just on our AI and helping implement that. I mean, I think I could speak on behalf of you and I. Surely somebody that's been using AI in college and is a little more tech savvy than you and I can add a lot more value than we can to our enterprise. So I'm excited for that. And we have a very specific, we have like 75% of his bandwidth of like things that we know we need to get accomplished with this AI, but also like 25% of it, hey, here's just a blank canvas. Show us what you can do. And I'm excited to learn from him what he can do with it.
Yeah, let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Like, you don't have to share anything proprietary or anything, but where are you finding benefits? What are you doing there with AI?
Yeah. What, in your coaching and your other businesses, this is something we did last week in our broker meeting. We always started meetings with an icebreaker, like, oh, what's one thing personal and professional that's positive that's happened to you in the last week? Well, last week we went around the table. What's one way you're using AI to benefit you in your business? It was really interesting conversation, how many different ways people are using it to be more effective in their business. And I think everybody learned from that. So as you're with your companies, that might be a good way to kind of kick off some of the meetings. But I'm using it. I mean, I'm like scratching the surface. I'm just figuring it out. I'm still in that phase of like, just use it every day and you'll figure out how to make it better. But I use it I love to fish. So I'm asking a lot of questions about fishing. This is the personal stuff. I have a little espresso machine, and it was only filling up my espresso 2/3. And I took a picture of the machine and uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, I want it to fill it up 3/3. What do I do? And it was like five step instructions, So even just the simple stuff like that. Professionally, I've really enjoyed being kind of like a tier 1 user of adding a project, uploading a lot of information to it. Maybe it's related to leadership and coaching. Maybe it's related to something that, bottleneck in the business that we're trying to solve for, and getting some ideas from it. My operations folks, we call it our shared services team. There's a team of people that support these three different business units. They're using it at, like, if there's 5 tiers, they're like tier 3 plus. They're using it for the backbone of our tech program. I know it had a lot to do with building out the new websites, reporting. Our finance guys are using it in a big way. Our private equity fund, we've built a pretty cool model in Claude that can, we can upload all the information on the market that we have, the OM from the property that we're considering buying, and it can basically do an entire investment memo,
Yeah.
and get you kind of at least rounding first or second base on whether or not it's an asset you would want to buy. And we're using it for all of our clients on the brokerage business. I mean, there's just a lot of people using it in a lot of different ways, and it's changing so fast. It's like there's not one silver bullet that anybody's using it for that I could say, you know what, for this is how you should be thinking about using this in your business. I don't think we are there yet. I think we're still on the junior varsity AI team.
Yeah, I think that's part of the fun of it, though. Like, ever since I started integrating AI, I use it every day in some form or fashion, some deeper, some shallower. But it's fun because it evolves so quickly. You can always learn something new. You can always find some new application of it, and it sounds like you guys are having a good time with it too. So, all right. So, tell me about, you're a Winston guy. Like, everybody. Trust me, guys. Aubrey knows everybody in Winston. So, tell me about the market and the Triad. I know the Triad's more than just Winston, but you guys dominate there. Tell me about that. What your thoughts are.
Well, when we started Linville Team Partners 15 years ago, Coleman and he was from Lexington. I was born in Rockville, moved here after the third grade, less than a mile from downtown, and coming here from basically Washington, D.C., which is Rockville, to Winston-Salem, fourth grade. My parents were like, man, there's no traffic here. Place is totally safe. Go ride your bike downtown, ride your go-kart to Haynes Mall, ride your go-kart downtown, whatever you want to do, have at it. And so downtown was my stomping ground. Coleman was very familiar with Winston-Salem because they would come here from Lexington, to shop, to eat, whatever. But 15 years ago, we were really lucky. A lot of good timing on our part, which was luck. We were kind of rode the coattails of the guys that really put downtown Winston-Salem on the map. And it was just starting to be cool again. People were starting to invest their dollars in downtown Winston-Salem. And Innovation Quarter was just starting to come out of the ground. That was our first big leasing project. The Wells Fargo Tower was about empty. We helped lease it up. So we were like really lucky to have this opportunity to start our business around something that we were really passionate about, which was downtown Winston-Salem. It was cool. There's new breweries wanting to come here that we were helping landlords or the brewery, go into spaces, great restaurants, all this kind of stuff happening. And fast forward to, I'm going to say 2019, I think that was the year, Business 40, which was the interstate that went right through downtown Winston-Salem, closed for 2 years. And that was tough on retail in downtown Winston-Salem. Most of the retailers in downtown Winston-Salem were here because they were passionate about doing something good for Winston. I think it would be safe to say the majority of people that had been in retail up until that point in downtown Winston had not been unbelievably profitable, but they were passionate. They were unbelievably passionate. And then 2020, COVID hit. So it was like one black eye on the left eye, another black eye on the right eye with COVID coming. And downtown has taken a toll over the last 5 years. And I'll speak to the Triad too, but just speaking of Winston-Salem specifically, retail has been hurt. The homeless population has increased a lot. I'm not going to say safety has gotten any worse because of bad behavior downtown or homeless folks or like the whole curfew thing they're talking about in downtown Winston-Salem now that has just been approved. But the feeling of safety for your average consumer that doesn't live downtown, doesn't come downtown often, to come to a restaurant doesn't feel as good as it might feel going elsewhere. So there's still people pouring time, energy, and money into downtown, but the traffic isn't quite what it was leading up to the closure of Business 40. And so we're right back at that same point where we were like 15 years ago, of like momentum starting to build again.
Good.
Things are starting to happen. We're starting to see office leasing come back a little bit downtown. We're starting to see some new retail spaces opening. You may not be aware of this. It probably doesn't hit the Pinehurst news, but the Stevens Center, our downtown performing arts center, is going through an $80 million plus renovation project that's going to open, I believe, end of 27 or early 28, right here on 4th Street, a block away from our office. A block behind that, there's a new 5,500 seat amphitheater that's being built by two local businessmen, Don Flo and another gentleman who is in the concert business. Those two things I think are going to open around the same time, and it's going to bring a ton of bodies downtown to support these retailers. Really excited about that. Innovation Quarters on a roll. There's a big that's associated with Wake Forest University. There's a big project that Coleman Team and Front Street Capital are doing up on the north side of town called The Grounds, that is going to have a material impact on that submarket. Wake being able to recruit folks, like that's where I'm sure spend a lot of time shopping and going out to dinner or bars or whatever with my friends. So I'm really excited about that. The Triad as a whole is on a tear. And there's a lot of great economic development stuff that's happening here in behind the scenes, and then also a lot of this stuff that's been announced. Like Jet Zero just broke ground on their new project at the Greensboro Airport, which is 20 minutes from here. They're going to hire 15,000 people eventually. You've got Boom Supersonic that's happening there. You've got Honda Jet that's continuing to grow at the airport. You've got the Toyota manufacturing plant that's happening outside of Sanford. You've got all these big things that are happening that over time, let's call it 5 years or 10 years even, are going to have a material impact on everything commercial real estate in the Triad. It's office leasing, it's more industrial leasing, it's more multifamily units being built. That's going to bring more retail. So I'm really excited about where we're headed. It's been a little slow with what has always been our bread and butter, which was downtown Winston-Salem, the kind of local brokerage in Winston, which is why we've branched out into so many different places. But the future looks very bright here. I think the cost of living is great. The access to great things, to great places to eat, great live music, walking trails, city parks, the school system, though they had a pretty serious ding with their budget issues last year. That news might not have made it to Pinehurst either, but they're kind of getting their act back together. So I'm excited about where we're headed.
Yeah, that's why we get along so well, is because we always we see the light in the dark there. I like that, Aubrey. You're a big aviation guy. Did I read something recently about the Triad International Airport going through an upgrade, remodel, or something like that too?
Yeah. As far as the terminal or just the airport in general?
I want to say it was the terminal, but maybe you probably know more about that.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't know that much about the terminals. I do think I read something about that, and I feel like I should know. I've been paying more attention to what's happening outside the terminals at the airport, which is Jet Zero, Boom, Honda Jet, and all these other things that are happening there. I actually don't fly out of Greensboro much. So if I'm flying commercial, I'm usually driving to Charlotte, just because the places that I'm going, I can get a direct flight out of Charlotte, and I don't go to New York much. I don't go to many of the places that there's direct flights out of Greensboro to. If there is a direct flight, I'm going to Greensboro. But most of the time I'm going to Charlotte. It's an hour and 5 minutes door to door. You can pull right into the parking lot, TSA, pre-check, walk right through. Never check bags. It's just walk right onto the flight. It's pretty easy. But I do think the Greensboro Airport, they're getting a lot more commercial traffic through there. Guys like us flying through there, so that's exciting to see. When I was a kid, that place was booming. There was a ton of flights in and out of there, and I think they're starting to get all that back again. And back to what we were saying about just the Triad in general, all these new jobs, all these new people, that is going to have a material impact on the commercial aviation, right there in those terminals you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm really, anybody that listens to this podcast knows that I love Greenville, South Carolina. I spent a lot of time down there, and the transformation that BMW has made on that entire community. I'm talking Spartanburg, Greenville, all that stuff. I'm really curious to see if Toyota has a similar impact. I know they're a little bit, east down 421 from y'all, but just down the road from Greensboro. Be really interesting to see how the investments there, all the new development out there, suppliers following the factory, things like that, transform that area. So, all right, I've got one or two more questions for you, and I'll get you out of here. I know you're a busy guy, Aubrey.
No, it's all right. Hit me.
All right, what is one thing in the commercial real estate industry that is considered, biblical? It's just a common accepted thing that you think is bullcrap or off course or whatever.
Oh man, that's a funny one. I'll tell you what I think is bullcrap. I'll just answer that. The devil is always in the details. When you're looking at deals, or you're working with other brokers and they say something is triple net, or they say it's absolute triple net, or they say it's modified gross, it's never what people are saying. And you always have to dig in. I wish there was some, somebody that came out with a definition book of what these different things are, and that everybody agreed that that's what we're going to use. So that's just like a frustration of mine, because you see triple net and you're like, okay, I know this isn't triple net. What is actually the landlord responsible for here? So we can share that with our client or put it into our underwriting. But another thing I'm just going to throw out there. This is might not be something that is widely agreed to, but I believe in it wholeheartedly. I don't think, let's talk about sales and commercial real estate specifically. I do not think you need a college education to be successful in this business. Mm-hmm. I think what you need, and I tell my kids this all the time, and if you look at the people that we have here, some of our most productive people don't have college degrees or have stories like you and I have. I think what you need to be successful in sales, whether it's real estate or anything else, you need to have a great personality. You need to have a great smile. You need to have an impeccable reputation. That's everything. And a tireless work ethic. As long as you have those four things, you can win every single time. You could be a used car salesman. You could be selling rockets for SpaceX, whatever it is. If you've got those four things, you can figure everything else out. I'm a Parks and Rec major, and I have figured out a few things. I'm pretty happy with what I've done with my education, which is kind of threw it out the door and figured everything else out on my own. And I would say a lot of people talk about, how important that is in this industry. You need to have, a finance background. Like, yeah, some of those things are helpful. But man, this commercial real estate specifically is on the job training. I don't care what you're doing or where you're going. You got to figure it out on the job, especially in sales and brokerage. So, if anybody's listening to this, before you go spend $50,000 a year on an education somewhere, if you're committed to commercial real estate, spend some time learning commercial real estate. Go get your real estate license. Make sure you're doing internships and just doing something in that closely related to this industry that'll help you get that job. Yeah, because it's not always the degree.
No, I love that, and I'm not crapping on education or degree or anything like that. I've got one too, but I actually had a debate with my mom, and last 2 weeks ago, my mom has 2 masters. She's got a doctorate in her field. High believer in higher education, and again, I believe in it too. But I totally agree with you. You can have all the best degrees in the world. None of that matters in this industry if you don't do those 4 things that you mentioned.
My business partner, Nick Gonzalez, who I think you've talked to before. I don't know if you've know his story, but if anybody has ever done a deal with Nick, they will tell you he's one of the most detail-oriented, thorough, smartest people I've ever done a deal with, and he hustles. He was a film major at UNC School of the Arts in Winston-Salem. He was a damn film producer. and now he's a big time 7-figure producer in real estate. And it just goes to show you, like, he followed his heart and what his passion was in film, but he realized he maybe enjoyed commercial real estate a little bit more, but he didn't learn anything about it in college.
Yeah. No, a lot of the most successful people I've been around in this industry do not have they don't have a straight path here. So
Yeah.
I love to hear that.
What's yours? I'm interested. What's your one thing that you think?
That's a great question, Aubrey. I'm not sure I've ever actually thought about that. I had somebody, I'll ask you this question. Somebody told me recently, because it's become a common question for me on the episodes, is market rent. Market rent is a myth. What do you think about that?
Totally. It just depends. It's all so nuanced. Yeah.
Yeah.
But below market rent, or below market value, below replacement cost, whatever it is,
Replacement costs. I love that term.
Yeah. But, you could buy a building for $1 million. You could buy a building for $5 million. Somehow an appraiser is going to get it to pencil for whatever that price is. Again, it's kind of like this whole triple net to gross thing. It's the devil's always in the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it, man. All right. We're about at time here. Anything to add? Anything the world needs to know about the industry or Aubrey or LTP or X-Man or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think if anybody wanted to learn more about our business, look up, Google Linville team. If anybody wanted to connect directly with me, I'm pretty easy to find on our website, or just Google my name. And, always willing to have conversations with anybody that's willing to talk and listen.
That is absolutely true. That's how Aubrey and I got here today, that last part about having a conversation. Also, I'm not inviting people to your office, but if you ever get the opportunity to go by Linville Team Partners office in downtown Winston on 4th Street, it's something else, and you need to see it, especially if you try to build an organization and do it with great people. So, all right, Aubrey, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Take care. Have a great week. See you soon.
See you, buddy.